Okay, so when we look at the parshas of the Mishkan, specifically Parshas Pikudei, there's a phrase that seems to constantly be repeating itself. The phrase "Kasher Tziva Hashem es Moshe." Okay, so basically, if you go through Parshas Pikudei, as you're doing your Shtei Mikra, you'll be amazed to see that literally every single parsha ends with the same phrase. Each different beged of the begadim of the Kohanim, each different kli that was used in the Beis Hamikdash, each parsha, as it finishes off, it ends up the parsha Kasher Tziva Hashem es Moshe. And then after they bring everything, then it closes that they brought everything in the Mishkan was all Kasher Tziva Hashem es Moshe. Over and over again, the exact same phrase. So the Beis Levi points out the obvious pella. Why does the Torah see fit to keep reviewing this phrase over and over and over again? So the Beis Levi explains, based on the basic understanding, that the purpose of the Mishkan was, or at least one element of the Mishkan was, that it was meant to be a kapara for the Chet HaEgel. So Chazal darshan this in a couple of different places. There's a drasha that chatu be'ela v'niskapru be'ela, that they said Ela Elokecha Yisrael, Elohecha, I'm sorry, without they said that this is your God when they worshipped the Egel. And in the beginning of Parshas Vayekhel, it starts off Ela. It starts off, one second. Okay, so you see this hackish of Ela between the Chet HaEgel and the Binyan HaMishkan. The Chazal also point out the hackish of Nizamim. It mentions Nizamim, the earrings, the nose rings, I'm sorry, that were used, the jewelry that was used both for the Egel and for the Trumas HaMishkan. So the Beis Levi brings these different places where Chazal make this connection that there's meant to be some kind of a kapara that was going on in the Binyan HaMishkan for the Chet HaEgel. So how do we understand this? Well, obviously we want to understand what the kapara, what the nature of how they were mechaper for it. We need to start by understanding what was the Chet HaEgel. So obviously there's a lot of discussion about what exactly the nature of the Chet was. But one mahal that the Ramban brings is that the essence, right? Most of the Meforshim understand that it's not mamish avodah zarah, that they didn't actually think that this statue was a god and was, something to worship. Rather, the Ramban explains that the mistake was that they were concerned that Moshe Rabbeinu hadn't returned, and they felt like they were incapable of connecting directly to Hashem. They felt like they needed some kind of an intermediary to intervene on their behalf with Hashem. And at the loss of Moshe Rabbeinu, which the Sadnan was mevalbel them, they thought Moshe Rabbeinu had been nifter, and therefore they felt abandoned and lost, like they wouldn't be able to have a relationship directly with Hashem. They needed some kind of a concrete physical representation where they could focus their service of Hashem. So the Ramban understands that it wasn't chas v'shalom that they thought that the Egel itself was a god, but they thought that they could somehow focus their attention and their energy on this Egel and direct their avodas Hashem through the Egel. Okay. We see that the people who made the Egel obviously were trying to tune into some very profound chachma, right? They didn't just go to some, stam artist and say, design an Egel for us. They went to Aaron HaKohen, right? They understood that they were trying to do something bigger. They were trying to ki'ilu fiddle with the spiritual mechanisms that run the world, and therefore they thought that Aaron HaKohen could use his Chachmas HaTorah to create the proper medium that would help them to connect to Hashem. Okay, okay. I see we have a bunch of people tuning in now. We just started a couple minutes ago. The basic kasha that we started off with, that the shir is going to focus on, is this phrase that keeps repeating itself again and again in Parshas Pikudei, kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe. That everything that they did in the Mishkan, the Torah goes out of its way to emphasize that everything was done exactly the way that Moshe was mitzvah them to do it. And obviously that's a pella why in every single parsha we need to keep going over that phrase again and again and again. So we're explaining based on the Beis HaLevi that says that the Binyan HaMishkan was meant to be a kapara for the Chet HaEgel. So by understanding what the nature of the Chet HaEgel was, that's going to hopefully help us to understand what the focus was when they were building the Mishkan. So the Chet HaEgel, we're explaining the Mahalach based on the Ramban, that the Ramban says that they weren't actually worshiping Avodah Zarah, or maybe the Eruv Rav, whatever, but the Klal Yisrael didn't do it l'shem Avodah Zarah. Rather, what Klal Yisrael had in mind when they did the Chet HaEgel was they were concerned that since Moshe Rabbeinu hadn't returned from Har Sinai, so they felt like they were incapable of connecting to Hashem directly. They felt that they needed some kind of an intermediary, and if Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't there, then they wanted to have this Egel that would somehow be some kind of a concrete, down here in this world representation that they could use to focus their avodas Hashem. And therefore they turned to Aaron HaKohen, and they thought that he would use his chachma to understand the spiritual makeup of the world, what kochos they would need to connect to Hashem. So the Ramban points out that the Egel was actually an Egel is a baby shore, and the shore is one of the faces on the Ma'aser Merkava. And specifically, the Ramban makes a cheshbon that they were in the desert, which is a place of desolation, which is parallel to the northern side. The northern side is where the sun doesn't shine. It's considered a place of desolation, Safun, where Hashem is hidden. And therefore, they felt like they needed to connect to Hashem through this panim of the shore. And therefore, that's why they made this the statue of the Egel. Okay, so they had a whole cheshbon based on the Ma'aser Merkava of Al Pi Kabbalah, why this was the way that they were going to connect to Hashem. So then we have to ask ourselves, so where did they go wrong, right? If they really had good intentions, and in fact, right, in the end of the day, we're going to see that Hashem is going to be mitzvah to make the Mishkan, which to some extent is an expression of the same idea, that the Mishkan is some kind of physical structure where there's a hashras hashchina, and that does in some way help us to connect to Hashem in our world, within our within our physical realm. There is some expression in the Mishkan. So it seems like they were tapping into something very deep, and their ideas were not far off from the emes. So where did they go wrong? What was so terrible? Obviously, the Chet HaEgel was a terrible, terrible Chet that the ramifications we're still suffering the ramifications from the Chet HaEgel. So what exactly went wrong? So the Beis HaLevi explains that the fundamental mistake of the Chet HaEgel was thinking that they could use their own ingenuity, their own creativity, so to speak, to tap into what is the proper way of serving Hashem. And the problem was that the Torah says not to do it that way. The Torah says very specific gedarim of the Isser of Avodah Zarah. And therefore, even if you have a cheshbon that you think that in our situation, this is the best way of serving Hashem, Hashem says, no, that's off limits, right? The Torah says no Avodah Zarah, that's off limits. That's not a legitimate way of serving Hashem anymore. So the Beis HaLevi explains that was the essence, the root of the hate of the Egel, was this trying to be innovative and understanding based on the depth of their understanding, trying to figure out the best way to serve Hashem, when in reality, the true way to serve Hashem is the way He tells you in the Torah, and anything that goes against the Torah is off limits, even if you have a cheshbon. Okay, that's the famous pasuk in the Navi. It says, "Behadi kavsha d'Rachman olamalach." Why are you intervening in Hashem's cauldron, Hashem's soup pot, right? Hashem's cholent pot, right? What are you mixing in there? Okay, the context over there was that I think it was Chizkiyahu HaMelech was not trying to be Mekayim Pruruvu. He wasn't trying to have kids. The reason was because he saw the nevuah that his son would be a terrible rasha and would lead Klal Yisrael astray, and therefore he wasn't being Mekayim the mitzvah of Pruruvu. And the Navi came and gave him Musar. He said, "Bahadi kavsha d'Rachman olamalach." Why are you mixing in? Hashem gave you a tzivoy to be Mekayim Pruruvu. That's your business. If a son who's a rasha is going to come out of that, that's Hashem's cheshbonos. Hashem is running the world. You can't outsmart Hashem. All you have to do, I forget exactly the hemshel of the pasuk. It says what your mitzvah, that's what you have to do, and you don't mix into Hashem's cheshbonos. That's the klal that they misunderstood in the Chedei Egel. Now, now, why is this off limits? Why is it so terrible to make cheshbonos of what's the best thing for the good of the world? So, the truth is that there were times in history that people did this effectively. Okay, here it's an interactive meeting here. So, when did somebody do something that was technically against the Torah because of their deep understanding of what was needed in the world?
Korah.
Yeah. What's that?
Har Carmel.
By
Har
Moshe,
Carmel with Eliyahu and
Amram,
Navi.
and Yocheved.
Okay.
Pinchas.
Eliyahu and Navi, Har Carmel.
Wow, you guys are all over the
Pinchas.
place.
With
Great.
Eliyahu and-
What's
Oh, I got it.
Eliyahu and Navi with Har Carmel.
Okay, very good. I mean, it was a little bit different because there was a tzivoy, and that was Horas Shah. Okay, so let's talk. One of the examples was given was Amram and Yocheved. That was technically an usher relationship because they were krovim, and the even more direct application of that was Yaakov marrying two sisters, right? So Yaakov Avinu married two sisters, which seems to be against the Torah. Okay, so the Nefesh HaChaim explains that what was going on was like this: that in those times, the avos kept the mitzvos, and even though they weren't mitzvah, and therefore the whole kiyum of mitzvos of the avos was all based on their understanding. So I'm just going to put everyone on mute until you're ready to speak up, just so we don't have background noise. So in the times of the avos, there was no tzivoy. So the reason they were doing mitzvahs is because they understood the tikkunim that were done by the mitzvahs. They understood what the mitzvahs were metaken in the spiritual world, and therefore they saw that, let's say, I don't know, wearing tefillin, keeping Shabbos, whatever it was, they saw that these things made a tikkun in the world, and therefore they did all these things based on their understanding of how the spiritual world works. So based on that, the Nefesh HaChaim explains that in those generations, if somebody in his deep wisdom was in fact able to tap into the real Ratzon Hashem and the real understanding of what would be metaking the spiritual world in the greatest way, so they were able to make adjustments in the technical mitzvahs of the Torah, because the whole goal was to make tikkunim, to fix the world. So, for example, Yaakov Avinu saw that the Shvatim were going to come out from these two sisters, and therefore he understood that in that situation, the Ratzon Hashem was to bring out this tikkun, even if it was against a technical mitzvah of the Torah. Again, because at that time there was not yet a tzivoy. Okay, so that was the key: is that in the generations where the whole kiyum mitzvos was based on their understanding of the Ratzon Hashem and the tikkunim that the mitzvos made, So they could then make exceptions and say, but in my situation, this is this outweighs the tikkun that would be made through the Shmiras HaMitzvos. Okay, that was what went on in the Doros of the Avos. But all that changed at Kabbalas HaTorah. Once Klal Yisrael received the Torah, then it's no longer dependent on the tikkunim of what we accomplished. Then the etzem fact that we're being shomer, that Tzivoy Hashem, that is the greatest tikkun. Okay? In other words, there still is the spiritual aspect that, yes, being Mekayim mitzvahs does make tikkunim in the world. But there's an even greater aspect of Shmiras HaMitzvos, which is that we're being Mekayim the Tzivoy Hashem. And therefore, once it's not just the tikkunim that the mitzvahs make, but it's the tzivoy shabo. So once there is that tzivoy, so then no cheshbonos can override that. That becomes an absolute, that the tzivoy itself is the essential kiyum of the purpose of Shmiras HaTorah. Okay, so let's take a look at a Nefesh HaChaim that explains this inyan, and we'll see an interesting context where he brings it. Okay, so the Nefesh HaChaim says like this. Okay, here first, let's just take a look back by when he talks about the Avos. He says, "L'chein kishehesi Yaakov Avinu alav Hashem shelafi shoresh nishmaso yigrom tikunim gedolim bekochos v'olomas alyonim im yisa asher achayos elu rachel v'leah." Vehem yivnu shtein es beis Yisrael. Yaga kami yigios v'avodos lasigam sheyinasulo. V'chein ha'inyan ba'amram shnasa yochevet dodasa. Sheyatzu mimena Moshe v'Aaron v'Miriam. Okay, so that's the Nakuda. He says that since the whole inyan of the Avos being Mekayim the Torah was because of the tikkunim that were accomplished, so they were able to override that in a situation where they saw that was the greater good, the greater ratzon of Hashem in that situation. Okay, but here's the big but, right? But the Nefesh HaChaim says, Umisha ba Moshe v'horida la'aretz. From the time that Moshe Rabbeinu came and brought the Torah down to this world, lo b'shamayim. Now it doesn't depend on what goes on in the spiritual world. Now all that matters is the tzivoy that Hashem gave us here. Okay, now see if you can pick up the reference here. He says, "Uleval yischake ma'adam hagadol hasagaso meruba," and therefore, even the wisest person who has the greatest insight shouldn't be mitchakem, shouldn't try to outsmart Hashem, so to speak. Lomar anochi haroa sod v'tamei mitzvos. That a person shouldn't think to say that since I understand the tamei mitzvos so deeply, the kokos v'olomas elyonim. That a person might think that based on my spiritual understanding, for me personally as an individual or for some specific person, lav or chaz v'shalom al ezem mitzvah, lidchos shum pride mi period mitzvah la'asosa b'migrat atik tu echad midivrei sofrim o l'shanos zman chaz v'shalom, right? So not to change any detail or to change the time, right? Can anyone guess what that's referring to? Right? Obviously,
All the Hasidim.
Yeah, right. Obviously, a lot. Well, yeah, Hasidim in general. That's part of the Mahalach of Hasidus, that they were not makpid on Zman. I mean, it's not stam out of laziness, right? It's out of cheshbonos that they feel that they need to prepare themselves for davening and go to the mikveh and do all kinds of preparations before they're ready to daven. So that's exactly the Nakuda. That's part of the whole Mahalach of the Nefesh Chaim, is counteracting the attitudes and perspective of the early Hasidim. Okay, so he makes a point here that even if you have your cheshbonos, and even if you're a very tuned in spiritual person who thinks that this is the right thing for you, it can never be the right thing if it's against the Torah. The bottom line is, once the Torah is given, you have to be shomer with every prad and diktuk, and it's no longer possible to make individual personal cheshbonos based on your understanding of what's the proper thing to do. Okay, so that's the big yesod of the Nefesh Chaim, and based on that, the Beis Halevi says that was the ikar yesod of the Chet HaEgel, that the Chet HaEgel was trying to create this new spiritual pathway to connect to Hashem, but since it was technically against the Isra of Avodah Zarah, of creating a statue and worshiping it, that overrides all of the good intentions that the people who created it might have had. So now, based on all of this, the Beis Halevi explains beautifully. So now we understand, if the purpose of the Mishkan was to be a tikkun for the Chet HaEgel, so what is the most important aspect that we need to emphasize when we're making the Mishkan? The fact that everything is done kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe, right? That's why every parsha ends with this phrase, to realize, yes, this does seem a little bit similar to making an egel. Yes, there is some kind of a physical expression of the Shekhinah in this world, but this is not like the egel, because this is being done kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe. Everything is being done exactly the way that Hashem was mitzav Moshe, and that's the big tikkun, that now they realized that they need to do everything by the book, right? No, you can't, add an extra branch to the menorah because, keneged this or keneged that. You can't, add an extra little decoration here or there based on your understanding of Kabbalah. No, everything is kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe. That's all that's expected of you, not to, try to outsmart anyone or come up with your own mahalach. Okay, so this is fundamental mahalach in Yiddishkeit. That's what the Nefesh Chaim is pushing. That it could be coming from high spiritual understanding. It could be coming from attitudes of enlightenment, that now things are different. We have to do things differently. We have to it could be coming from kind of this touchy-feely Judaism, like, oh, this makes me feel good. I don't know. A woman putting on tefillin or something. Oh, it makes me feel so spiritually in tune, whatever. Okay, but the Shulchan Aruch paskins, that's not acceptable, right? That's a lot of the takeaway that we have to get from this, is this idea that it's not about what makes you feel spiritual, what makes you feel connected, right? That all of those things are secondary or third, whatever, are far below the chashivus of the diktuk mitzvahs, of the tzivoy that Hashem gave, it being mekayim exactly the way that Hashem gave it. Okay. Now, I noticed something when I learned this Beis Halevi, a very fascinating. The Beis Halevi doesn't point this out, but I noticed a very fascinating nekuda about the timing here. Okay. So we said, when did all of this change? It changed at Kabbalah Torah, when the Torah was brought down to this world. That's when we no longer have the capability of making these horas shah and making our own cheshbonos of doing things for the spiritual good that are against the dictate of the Torah. Now, when did the Chet HaEgel happen? What was the exact timing? So it's a fascinating thing, because the Yerushalmi says that the timing was like this. It says, Rav Shmuel bar Nachman b'shem Rabbi Yonasan says, Haluchos hayu orkan shisha tfachim v'rochman shlosha v'aya Moshe tafis b'tfachayim v'kadosh baruch hu b'tfachayim v'tfachayim ravach be'emtza. Okay, that Moshe Rabbeinu was holding on to the bottom third of the luchos. Hashem, so to speak, is holding on to the top third, meaning Hashem is just giving it over. The luchos are right now being given from Hashem to Moshe Rabbeinu, right? And then what happens at exactly that instant that the Torah is being given, right? It says, I'm sorry. Kivan she'asu Yisrael oso ma'isa. Right then is when Klal Yisrael did this ma'isa of the Chet HaEgel. Bikesh HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'chodfan miyadu Moshe. That Hashem wanted to take the luchos back. The Gavra Yadu Moshe b'chadfan. That's what it says. Kol Yada Chazaka. Moshe Rabbeinu's strong hand that he took away the luchos when Hashem tried to take them back. Okay, so do you guys appreciate the timing? What's going on here? Okay, Hashem has the luchos. If they would do the ego right now, right before Moshe Rabbeinu takes hold of the luchos, luchora they're okay, right? Because then they're on the madrega of the avos that they're doing mitzvos because the mitzvos make sense to them because they understand how the mitzvos help them to be mitag in the world, right? Now it comes along, Hashem gives the luchos to Moshe, he grabs onto the bottom two tefillin, boom, right? That second was when they blew it, right? The fact that they were doing the egel after Moshe Rabbeinu had already received the luchos, that luchora was the nekuda. Okay, that's so. It turns out that when we talk about the Cheda Egel, it was such a dakas nekuda that they didn't realize that they were too late for this hanhaga. There was a time when this hanhaga was acceptable, right? In the times of the Avos, but now is the time of Matan Torah. Okay, I don't have a raya that it's telling the Mesiris Aluchos. Maybe the fact that Hashem had already said the Aseres Adivros was Mechayiv, but I think it's an interesting ha'ara that the timing was exactly as the luchos were being given. That was exactly the time that they did the Cheda Egel, and because the Torah was already yored, was already given to Klal Yisrael. So now, like the Nefesh HaChaim says, now the tekufa that you can make these cheshbonos is no longer legitimate. From now on, you have to follow the dikduke halacha, the exact letter of the law, and the letter of the law says that you're not allowed to do anything against the Torah, which technically this is considered avodah zarah with all the good intentions. The bottom line is it's considered avodah zarah. Okay, so that is the message of the parsha of the Mishkan. When you keep seeing the kasher tziva Hashem is Moshe, kasher tziva Hashem is Moshe, so the nekuda that is being emphasized here is this factor that in order to be an attack in the Cheda Egel, we have to realize that we're in a new hanhaga, that in the times of post Matan Torah, that the ikar is the shmiras and mitzvahs, doing everything exactly the way we're in mitzvah, and all of our cheshbonos of what makes me feel spiritual, what makes me feel connected, even the higher levels of my understanding of Kabbalah and all these things, none of that can override the basic mitzias of the tzivoy of the tzivoy of the mitzvah. I'll just add in. I want to mention in the context of Chassidus, we're not trying to be done on the study. Obviously, there were great people on both sides of this machlokas, but I once heard a very nice ha'ara on this, that apparently in Gur, they're an exception to this rule that they are makbid on the zmanim, that they don't have these flexibility that other chassidus have about the zmanim of tefillah and things. So I think it was the Sfas Emes was the one who instituted this, even though his father, the Chidushei Arim, had been like the other chassidus not to be makbid on zmanim. So when the chassidim asked him, if it was good enough for your father, why, ma pidom that you're changing things? So the Sfas Emes said that for my father, his tefillahs were worthwhile for Hashem to wait for. That Hashem, his tefillahs were when he would prepare himself for tefillah, it was such a chashuv thing that Hashem could wait for his tefillahs. For my tefillahs, they're not going to be on that madrega anyway, so why? So I don't have the right to keep Hashem waiting. So that was a very political way of making that tikkun of being makbid on zmanim without being mizalzel in the previous doros. He was told on their gadlus and not on any chisaron. Okay, but Lamaisa, this is our mahalach, is the Litvish mahalach is like based on the Nefesh HaChaim, that we don't make cheshbonos, that this is the Tzivur Torah is the ikar. Okay.